Hello everybody.
Next up we play host to Aston Villa. Kick-off on Sunday at the Olympic is at 2 p.m, but there's no UK live TV coverage. The area seems relatively free of engineering works, though some of the early morning services on the soon-to-be renamed Overground to Stratford will be reduced. A virtue signalling issue, one presumes. So Villa then. Well, they're in fairly decent nick at present, having won 4 and lost 2 of their last 6. The second of those defeats was the somewhat surprising 4-0 reversal at home to one of those lesser clubs, Tottenham I think they were called. Prior to that, they'd won 3 on the trot, 3-2 away at Luton, 4-2 at home to Forest and 2-1 at Fulham. That following a home defeat by 2-1 to Man United. The Luton game was an interesting one. The first half saw Villa take a 2-0 lead as Luton looked like the relegation-threatened outfit that they actually are. The second half saw Luton forget who they were, and with 20 minutes left, they were level, only for their amnesia to disappear just before the final whistle, with Villa netting an 89th minute winner. All of that has left them in 4th place, with 55 points from 28 played. Now that's 2 points clear of Spurs, who do, however, have a game in hand. Villa were, of course, in action on Thursday in the Thursday night conference. Having got home at a reasonable hour from our game, I was able to catch much of the second half of theirs. There was one moment of commentary during that match which was pure, xenophobic bilge, really. Henderson, spouted the commentator, has a bit of an uphill task to get this Ajax side back up to the standards of the past, suggesting that it's just a case of sign an Englishman and everything will be okay. Didn't seem to occur to the commentator that the fact that the club of Cruyff, Neeskens and Rep were now reduced to signing Saudi League failures might have had something to do with their plight. No wins in 9 matches now with Henderson in the side tells its own story, and Villa must have been delighted to see him on the pitch as they gleefully ran in 4, the Dutchman's cause being not helped much by being reduced to 10 men after a red card, or more accurately, reduced to 9 men and Henderson. Villa's reward was a quarter-final tie against Lille. I don't suppose they fancy a swap. They had just the one new signing for Daisy to report on. They've seen something in striker Morgan Rogers, for whom they paid out £8 million to Middlesbrough, possibly rising to £15 million with add-ons. £2 million of the original £8 million will be sent to Manchester City, as part of a sell-on clause included in the deal that took him to Teesside in the first place. They really must need that money. His record of 2 in 26 league games with Borough is hardly what you might call prolific, and he's yet to score in 5 appearances for Villa. On the bright side for the player, the transfer represents a return to home turf, the player being brought up in the West Brom Academy. On the downside, that means returning to the West Midlands. Their win on Thursday night was not without its potential costs on the injury front. Talismanic striker Ollie Watkins sustained a self-inflicted knee injury in a late challenge on the Ajax keeper. He recovered enough to score a few minutes later, but was withdrawn shortly afterwards. The injury was described as a cut, which doesn't sound too serious, though the noises coming out of the Villa camp aren't in the main optimistic ones. Could be a few mind games going on there, I think. One player who'll definitely be out is Diego Carlos. The central defender felt a hamstring go on Thursday. It's only a week or 2 since he recovered from a similar injury, though it's not recorded whether the same thigh was involved this time round. It's a 50-50 chance it was, I suppose. Another absentee will be midfielder John McGinn. Apparently kicking lumps out of players these days is still a red card offence, even if the player plays for Tottenham. This will be the first of a 3-match suspension from the straight red he received. He'll be a big miss. For all the headlines Watkins gets, McGinn is often regarded as the heart of the team. Enough of them. Let's move on to the wild and wacky world of association football. Last week, the Premier League clubs voted to scrap the profit and sustainability rules that they themselves voted to introduce a couple of years ago. It appears that the clubs hadn't thought anyone would actually take the rules seriously. The punishment and potential punishments dished out to Forest and Everton seemed to come as a great surprise, and one suspects that the fact that the Everton punishment was dished out so early in the season was a major factor in the lack of activity in the winter transfer window. Not that Daisy's complaining too much. The failure to sort out the PSR shambles has had a knock-on effect, with the latest round of talks refunding from the Premier to Football League stalling once more. Nobody's coming out of the situation with an awful lot of dignity, and the latest to chip in with comments of a Henry Kissinger stroke death of satire nature is Preston director Peter Ridsdale, who has been bemoaning the lack of handouts from above. Now, the younger ones of you probably won't remember Ridsdale, who presided over the start of the financial collapse of Leeds United, leaving them something like £103 million in debt when he left Leeds in 2003. I also realise the younger of you will probably not remember Henry Kissinger either, but you'll have to go look that up on your own. And so to us. I don't know what we were worried about. OK, I wasn't totally comfy until the fourth went in. This is West Ham after all. But overall, there was much to be happy about. Kudus' first was something really special, and hats off to the photographer who caught that photograph of the shoe-polishing goal celebration. Overall, I thought it was a thoroughly professional outing against a team who must have been a big disappointment to their lively travelling support. Must have been very galling for them to have had a whole week of dreaming of quarter-final progress, only to see it disappear like tears in rain, as Roy Batty would have had it. And you'll probably have to look that one up too if you're quite young. It wasn't all good news, of course, never is. Alvarez's yellow will mean a suspension for the first leg out in Leverkusen, but hey, let's worry about that nearer the time. Team news is that the same two players are on the injury list. Cornet is definitely out, with a possible return to the squad over Easter on the cards. Emerson is believed to be a bit closer to a return, but faces a late test, with Cresswell set to continue in his stead if required. So to the prediction then. Well, lots of different factors for or against a particular point of view in this one. However, these seem to cancel each other out. For example, usually you imagine having an edge when you play a side who had a midweek European tie, but that will of course apply both ways. I think if you really wanted to split a hair, you might point out the 2 extra hours of rest that we had, but that would be really silly, even for this column. I'm therefore going to take the £2.50 that I was going to send over to Spurs owner Joe Lewis towards his US legal fees, with him having pleaded guilty to insider dealing, and I'll place it instead on a draw. Let's call it an entertaining 2-2, shall we, Mr. Winston? Enjoy the game.